Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you all today. Today, we'll be exploring the dead horse theory. My name is Nagaraju Avila, and I'll be guiding you through this presentation. We'll cover what the dead horse theory is, why it matters, and how it applies to our work and projects. So, let's get started and dive into this interesting concept together. Let's talk about the dead horse theory. Sometimes we keep pushing at something that just isn't working. If it's clear that a particular effort or project isn't delivering results and isn't going to, then it's time to stop wasting our energy on it. Instead of trying harder and harder to make it work, it's actually smarter to recognize when it's time to move on. Moving on allows us to redirect our resources, focus on new opportunities, and ultimately be more effective. This idea ties into the broader theme of being strategic with our time and efforts, knowing when to persist, and when to pivot for better results. So, how does this work for you as a maintenance manager? Well, if you notice that equipment or processes keep failing even after multiple repairs, it might be time to consider a different approach. Instead of pouring resources into fixing something repeatedly, it's smarter to plan for a replacement or an upgrade. This shift in strategy can really help with resource planning, making sure you're not wasting time and effort on non-productive fixes. It also helps in controlling costs because replacing or upgrading at the right moment can be more cost-effective in the long run. Most importantly, it improves the overall reliability of your operations. By avoiding endless repairs, you can focus on maintaining systems that are genuinely functioning well, which ultimately keeps your operations running smoothly. This approach aligns with the broader goal of optimizing maintenance strategies to be more proactive and efficient. Let's look at who has historically followed this dead horse theory. Maintenance managers, for example, often face the decision to replace outdated or frequently failing equipment rather than wasting time and resources on endless repairs. It's about recognizing when a fix no longer makes sense and making a smarter choice. Project managers also encounter this dilemma. Sometimes stopping non-performing projects is the best way to save time and keep budgets in check. Continuing down a failing path only drains resources and stalls progress. Business leaders, too, often face the challenge of dropping products or services that are no longer delivering results. Holding on to them just because they once did well can be a costly mistake. In software development, the approach might be to scrap or rewrite unmanageable code rather than trying to fix endless bugs that seem impossible to resolve. Sometimes, a fresh start is the most efficient solution. Startups, by their very nature, need to pivot from ideas that aren't working, shifting directions to find new opportunities. Even government policies are not immune. Sometimes, they are scrapped altogether if proven ineffective or outdated. And in sports, coaches often change strategies or players when the current approach isn't leading to winning results. All these examples highlight the importance of recognizing when to move on from what's no longer effective, whether in business, technology, or leadership, rather than stubbornly sticking to the old, unproductive path. It's a key concept that ties into our overall theme of strategic adaptability and smart decision-making. Let's talk about the dead horse theory. Imagine a man trying to ride a horse that is already dead. Now, what does that tell us? It's a metaphor for wasting effort on something that's no longer viable. The man keeps trying different tricks to get the horse to run, but no matter what he does, it just doesn't move. The key point here is that no matter how much effort or creativity he puts in, if the foundation is gone, if the horse is dead, nothing will change. This illustrates an important concept in our overall theme. Sometimes, we need to recognize when a situation or approach is beyond saving and stop wasting resources. It's about understanding when to shift gears rather than trying to force progress where it's no longer possible. Let's talk about the dead horse theory and what it really teaches us. Sometimes, we find ourselves stuck in a pattern of using ideas or methods that clearly aren't working anymore. We keep trying the same approaches, hopping for different results, but often, we're just beating a dead horse. Now, in this context, a dead horse is a metaphor for a failed system or process that we keep trying to revive. The key lesson here is that persistence in the wrong direction can lead to wasted time and resources. So, what happens when something stops working? Well, the answer is simple. It's a signal that we need to change. Clinging to outdated or ineffective systems only delays progress. To move forward, we must recognize when a system is no longer serving its purpose and be willing to make those necessary changes. This idea ties back to the overall theme of adaptability and continuous improvement, reminding us that knowing when to let go is just as important as knowing what to do next. All right, let's talk about the dead horse theory. This concept really highlights how people often keep trying the same solutions even when they clearly aren't working. On this slide, we see some common solutions that tend to be attempted. First, people might try to change the rider. That's like thinking if we just find someone new to lead, everything will improve. Sometimes that works, but often it doesn't address the real issue. Then there's the idea of using a stronger whip, pushing harder or applying more pressure. But again, if the problem isn't about effort or resistance, that just ends up being more of the same. Next, some try to form a committee. Now, that might seem like a good idea, but it can lead to endless meetings and no real action. It's often a way to avoid making tough decisions. And finally, blaming others. This is a classic tactic, pointing fingers instead of taking responsibility or trying to fix the root cause. The key thing to remember here is that these approaches are often just attempts to keep doing what's familiar, even when it's not effective. In the bigger picture, this slide reminds us that sometimes the best thing we can do is step back and recognize when a solution is just a dead end, like trying to beat a dead horse, and then consider truly new strategies. Let's take a look at the dead horse theory, which is often summarized as silly solutions. This concept highlights how sometimes, when a problem persists, we tend to throw quick fixes or band-aid solutions at it rather than addressing the root cause. For instance, one common approach is to buy better saddles. While that might seem like a practical step, it's usually treating the symptom rather than the core issue. Another example is sending the horse for training, which can improve performance temporarily, but doesn't necessarily solve the underlying problem that caused the issue in the first place. And then, we have bringing in consultants, often seen as experts who can offer fresh perspectives. While consultants can be valuable, relying solely on external advice without a thorough internal review can sometimes lead us down the same path of ineffective quick fixes. The key takeaway here is that these so-called solutions might seem helpful on the surface, but they often overlook the fundamental issues. As we continue with this presentation, keep in mind that sustainable change requires us to dig deeper and address the real causes, rather than just treating the symptoms with silly or superficial fixes. Let's talk about the dead horse theory and how it applies to office situations. First, we often find ourselves repairing the same equipment repeatedly. It's like chasing our tails. Each fix seems temporary, and the problem keeps coming back. This shows that we might be missing the real root cause. Next, patching leaking pipelines over and over again might seem like a quick fix, but it's really just a band-aid. The leak might keep reappearing because we're not addressing what's causing it in the first place. Using outdated maintenance plans is another common pitfall. Relying on old strategies can lead us to keep doing the same ineffective work, wasting time and resources. It's crucial to update and adapt our plans to prevent recurring issues. Overusing temporary jugaad fixes is also a typical scenario. While they might seem like quick solutions, they often hide deeper problems and prevent us from finding permanent solutions. It's like putting a patch on a leaking pipe without fixing the underlying cause. Finally, fixing belt misalignment without solving the root cause is a classic example. We adjust the belt, it works for a while, but the misalignment keeps coming back because we haven't addressed what's causing it, maybe a worn pulley or improper installation. All these points highlight a common theme. Sometimes, we get so caught up in quick fixes that we forget to solve the real problem. Recognizing this pattern helps us move towards sustainable, long-term solutions instead of just running in circles. Let's talk about the dead horse theory and why we often find ourselves stuck in certain patterns. First, One of the main reasons is fear of change. People are naturally scared to try something new because they think, what if the new way fails too? This fear makes us hesitant to move forward, so we tend to stick with what we know. Another reason is comfort in routine. Doing the same thing over and over feels easy and safe. We might think, we've always done it like this, and that comfort can make change seem more difficult than it really is. Even if the new approach could be better, the familiarity of the old way keeps us anchored. A third reason is a lack of ideas. Sometimes we honestly don't know what else to do. We might think, we don't have a better solution, and that leads us to keep repeating the same process without exploring new options. It's like running in circles because we believe there's no other way. And finally, there's the hope that maybe this time it will work again. We think, let's try one more time, even though history shows it often fails again and again. It's like trying to ride a dead horse. No matter how much effort we put in, it's not going to get us anywhere. All of these reasons connect to the bigger idea that sometimes we get stuck in these cycles because of fear, comfort, lack of ideas, or misplaced hope. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to moving past the dead horse and finding new, more effective ways forward. Let's talk about the dead horse theory and how to recognize when we're stuck. One of the key signs is no results. If we're putting in effort and not seeing any progress, that's a clear indicator. Another sign is no improvement. Despite ongoing efforts, if things remain stagnant, it's time to reassess. We also often see only excuses. When explanations start to outweigh actions, that's a red flag. And finally, everyone gets frustrated. When frustration builds up across the team, it usually means we're throwing good energy into a dead end. Recognizing these signs early helps us decide when to cut our losses and move on to more productive efforts. Let's take a closer look at the dead horse theory, which is a common challenge in maintenance and operations. First, we have the example of increased downtime. This happens when the same motor keeps breaking down, and instead of replacing it entirely, maintenance keeps repairing it. Over time, this leads to frequent breakdowns, which cause significant production losses. Next, there's the issue of higher maintenance costs. When old pumps need constant repairs, like seals, bearings, and gaskets, the costs quickly add up. In fact, these cumulative repair expenses can sometimes surpass the cost of simply installing a new pump. Finally, we see the impact on technicians. When they're repeatedly asked to just run it again, frustration builds. This kind of repeated, seemingly futile effort can lead to low morale and higher turnover among skilled maintenance staff. All of these points connect to a broader theme. Sometimes, sticking with the same old approach, despite its drawbacks, becomes a cycle that hampers efficiency and morale. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward breaking free from it. All right, let's talk about the dead horse theory and what you should do when you encounter a situation where something clearly isn't working anymore. First, the key is to accept it's dead. That means you need to admit that the old way, the system, or the machine no longer works. It's important to recognize when continued effort isn't making a difference. For example, if a motor keeps failing over and over again, it's time to accept that repairing it repeatedly isn't cost-effective or practical. Sometimes, you just need to face the reality that it's done. Next, stop wasting your time. Don't keep pouring effort into something that clearly isn't giving you results. Instead of trying to fix the same problem over and over, focus on addressing the root cause. For instance, if you're constantly adjusting a belt that keeps misaligning, it's better to fix the underlying issue rather than keep tweaking it. Your time is better spent on solutions that actually move things forward. Finally, try something new. When the old methods or systems aren't working, it's essential to explore new solutions, methods, or designs. Sometimes, upgrading to a newer, more efficient conveyor system instead of just repairing the old rollers repeatedly can save a lot of trouble down the road. Innovation is often the key to overcoming persistent issues and improving overall performance. So remember, recognizing when something is dead, stopping futile efforts, and trying new approaches are crucial steps to avoid wasting resources and to keep your operations moving forward. Let's talk about the dead horse theory and the importance of taking action. First, it's crucial to let go of the old way. This means stopping the use of methods that no longer work. For example, if you've tried a repair trick repeatedly and it fails every time, it's time to abandon that approach. Holding on to outdated methods only wastes time and resources. Next, we need to bring in new ideas. Think about better ways to solve the problem. Maybe there's a new machine part, a different tool, or a fresh method that can improve performance. Embracing innovation can lead to much better results and efficiency. Finally, be open to change. Don't be afraid to try something new. For instance, adjusting the maintenance schedule or upgrading equipment when necessary can make a big difference. Being flexible and willing to adapt not only keeps things running smoothly, but also aligns with our overall goal of continuous improvement. So remember, letting go, innovating, and staying open to change are key to avoiding the dead horse scenario and moving forward effectively. Let's look at some real-life examples of the dead horse theory not being followed. First, we have Nokia and mobile phones. Nokia continued investing heavily in its outdated Symbian operating system, even as the market was shifting rapidly toward Android and iOS. This resistance to change or pivoting led to them losing their leading position in the industry. Next, there's Kodak and film cameras. Interestingly, Kodak actually invented one of the first digital cameras, but they ignored the digital revolution and stuck with traditional film photography. Unfortunately, this decision caused them to fall behind competitors and eventually file for bankruptcy. Finally, we have BSNL in India. They relied on old landline and 3G infrastructure while private companies moved ahead with 4G and 5G technologies. As a result, BSNL started losing customers and market share because they didn't adapt quickly enough. These examples highlight how clinging to outdated technologies or strategies, what the dead horse theory warns against, can lead to significant setbacks in competitive markets. Let's focus on the key message here. Stop riding the dead horse. What does that really mean? Well, it's about recognizing when continued effort or investment isn't yielding any results. Sometimes we keep doing the same thing, hopping for a different outcome, but that's just wasting time and resources. It's time to walk a new path. This is about being courageous enough to let go of strategies or projects that are no longer productive. Instead, we should look forward and explore new opportunities that can bring real value. Remember, progress often requires us to step out of our comfort zones and embrace change. So, in the context of our overall theme, growth and innovation, this slide reminds us that to move forward effectively, we need to identify what's holding us back and be willing to move on from it. It's about making smart, strategic decisions to ensure our efforts are aligned with our goals. Let's not get stuck on what's dead. Instead, let's walk a new, more promising path. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide.